And then we were throwing forward to this earlier. Kirsty Coventry, the president of the IOC, has made some interesting comments with respects to athlete pay. So we don't want to quote out of context. What do we know here? What's been going on? Because I saw some news was out and then she came back with a statement. So what do we know?
So she was interviewed and then clipped for social by a Kiwi publication, a New Zealand publication. So they were probably lying because that's what the Kiwis do. No, jokes. Eddie, sorry. More serious than that. But most people have probably seen the social clip. Everyone's clipped it and had their comments. But she basically said the clip was like she doesn't believe in paying athletes, is what she said. Now, she then released a statement, as you said, and I'll read the statement. I'll quote the statement. It says, "Some of you might have seen a social media post about an interview I gave during my visit to New Zealand where I had a conversation with a journalist about paying prize money to athletes. When I was asked about it on camera, I did not repeat the words prize money. My mistake, lesson learned. Yes, I have always said that I don't believe in paying athletes prize money at the Olympic Games, as this would benefit only a few, very small number of athletes. I do not believe our role as the IOC is to find ways to directly support a large. Sorry, I do believe our role as the IOC is to find ways to directly support a large number of athletes on their journey to becoming Olympians at the Olympics and as they transition into their life after sport. As a former athlete, I'm absolutely committed to finding more ways to directly support athletes on their journey. So it's been quite interesting to think about this. Like, there's a lot of athletes that have come out. I mean, this was interesting to me to watch these athletes come out. So Liesel Jones is probably the one I clocked. So Liesel Jones is like top 2 or top 3 most successful athletes of all time, Olympians for Australia. She's a swimmer. She's got 3 gold, 5 silvers, and a bronze. And she basically came out and said the glory isn't worth it. Glory doesn't pay bills.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point.
And I think like there's certainly other people who've come out and said this is an issue, but this is to some degree similar to the discussion that's happening at Roland Garros. I think people are unhappy with who's pocketing what, right? It's not about like, I think everyone agrees we need more funding at the bottom level. But I think the biggest gripe people have, if this was still very amateur and no one was really earning much money from it, but then basically what the NCAA was previously, right? Previous to NIL, let's call it 5, 6 years ago, where you have all these administrators and colleges and whatever making tons of money, right? All the organizations making money and the individuals at the top of them making money and the athletes being exploited fundamentally. Yeah, I think we all have a problem with that. And this is kind of what's happening here to some degree, because apparently the IOC, according to the IOC, 90% of the money goes back into the sport. But Toyota pulled out as a sponsor after not seeing the IOC prioritizing athletes, reportedly. So,
Really?
yeah. So, and then if you do some digging here, 12 directors, and there are only 12 directors of the IOC, are making upward of 55 million, perhaps closer to 65 million.
Hang on. Hang on. Are you serious? 12
This is what,
directors of the IOC.
yeah, this is what the reports are saying that I'm reading. Again, I haven't done the basic research, but I try to verify this as many sources as I can. I'm not a journalist. I'm a small J journalist at best, not a real big J journalist. But all reports have them earning millions and millions of dollars in the last Olympic cycle.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's crazy. Like, I understand the romantic notion that, oh, it's for the glory, it's for the Olympics. Maybe 100 years ago, that's not the world we live in anymore. We live in a commercial society now. I know for a fact, like, the Olympics are so strict when it comes to how you can use the brand, how brands can tap into it. If you're not an official sponsor, they have eye watches everywhere. I think it's called Rule 34, where they have strict adherence to what you can mention. If you sponsor an athlete, and that athlete takes part in the Olympics, but that sponsor is not a sponsor of the Olympics, they are extremely strict in what you can and can't put out. They are
oh,
a
it's absurd.
commercial entity. So I also I understand the notion, the romantic notion of I want to put money into the development of the sport, so the grassroots levels and the lower levels. But I fear about the checks and balances at those levels. Whereas if you're paying prize money out to the best performing athletes according to position finishes, we know where that money is going. We can see where that money is going. It's very easy to account for. And the athletes deserve that. They've worked for it.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard because there's also a bit of a like, how much do we give to the top earners who are going to be earning a ton from it, right?
Mm, mm.
Like, do we need to be paying the US basketball team for winning a gold medal? Probably not. Those are some of the richest men in the world. Like, we probably don't need to be paying them. Like,
But
we could
should they
we
be
could pay them a
penalized for
million.
that? Should they be penalized for
No,
being good?
No, I don't think so. But I do think if we talk about what's best for the sport and basketball,
Mm.
they would probably agree. Actually, just don't give us that $1 million. Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
don't
It's
need
more of a
it.
hassle
It's
to collect it.
I'd rather not pay the tax in France. Like, let's just actually give that to the teams who are struggling to get to the Olympics. We'd rather see
Mm.
these nations who are struggling to play enough tournaments in the lead up. Like, we'd rather see them play, right? We'd rather distribute that, particularly in that context. Now, that's an extreme example and is probably the single biggest outlier we have, where you have some of the richest men in the world who come in to play for basically the love of the game. They pay for their own, they stay outside of the village, they do their own thing, they pay for it all themselves. Like, it's a very different scenario in that context. And certainly the women's team would love that money. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's all, so the WNBA is not the same as the NBA, but there's certain contexts where we got to be a little bit careful about who's winning what, I think. I certainly think. For the most part, though, most Olympic sports, and certainly the ones that, again, when I talk to people about what are the core Olympic sports, a lot of people say things like basketball shouldn't be there, football shouldn't be there, because it's not the pinnacle of the sport. And
Mm.
I'm starting to agree with that, is like, to make these games more sustainable, it's probably better for us to do less of things that are not the pinnacle of the sport and really like regress it back to the things that are really fundamental to how we see the Olympics. So, track and field and swimming are the first two that usually come to mind for people, depending
Mm.
on where you're from. But there's also things like Greco-Roman wrestling and all these weird sports that you otherwise don't see much. I like those are cool to see there. And then let's pay winners. Let's try and pay everybody to come there, right? Make it a little bit more sustainable, and then try and pay everybody to come on some level, because we do. Part of the challenge is some of the best people, or the person who could be the best, may not be able to afford to go. I
Yeah.
know one of the US athletes, I think she was a discus thrower. She's one of the track and field athletes. Flavor Flav had to pay her rent because she was
I
struggling to make
remember
rent
that.
money.
Yes. Yeah. We talked about that. Yeah.
So yeah, there's certainly that. But so back to the like who's earning what. Apparently, Kirsty Coventry's on 350K plus a housing allowance for her part, and like I don't know, that's probably reasonable given she's head of the IOC. I don't think that's too exorbitant, although it depends on where you're from and how you view that. But it's these directors on millions and millions and millions is insane. So there's also certainly, I saw some stuff that I didn't want to mention explicitly on air that people were posting because I couldn't corroborate it, around what these people were paid per diem. So that's like when they travel, what they were getting per day, plus the sort of levels of hotels they were staying in, the flights, etc. So like that stuff all comes into it as well. And maybe that's part of where this 55 million goes. I don't know, but certainly worthwhile considering there as well. But the other question is like, how do we actually pay these athletes, right? And this is kind of what we're talking about. So medal bonus makes some sense, and World Athletics pays the winners, the gold medal winners, 50K, which has been controversial, right? Because Seb Coe came out and did that. And again, we've talked about this before. When a competitive league comes in, right? So Live Golf or something like this, it often makes the PTO T100 in triathlon, makes the established ones sit up and go like, oh geez, we have to do something different here, and disrupts them from a pay standpoint. So obviously a mixture of the enhanced games and maybe some other things like Grand Slam track made World Athletics start paying, right? It's probably
Yeah.
more enhanced games. So I think that's kind of good, but it's always interesting to think about this. Cam McEvoy, the world record holder and reigning Olympic champion in the 50-meter freestyle, the Australian, said he called for a $10,000 appearance fee for Olympians and payouts of $100,000 for a gold medal, 60,000 for a silver, and 25,000 for a bronze medal. Um, I think he means some athletes. I don't think he means team sport athletes, because that just becomes cost prohibitive. Again, if we
Mm.
change it and we cull the Olympics back to some of the sports we think are crucial in the pinnacle sports, or pinnacle of those sports, then maybe this makes sense. But you can't pay, even if we have handball in there, which I think a lot of people associate with the Olympics, or water polo, or both. Like that becomes cost prohibitive very quickly to give each of those people $10,000. But again, like maybe this money exists if these directors are taking that much. It's hard to know. Um, but Coventry, back to that Rebel Leagues thing and the enhanced games, like Coventry's comments couldn't come at a worse time. Like the enhanced games have just paid
Why?
a bunch of people a bunch of money,
Uh,
uh, and they've come out and said, if you break the world record, Usain Bolt's world record, we'll pay you a bunch more. Like, and a bunch of athletes have come out and said, I want to do this next year, compete clean and do this.
your
Now,
money is safe in Hans games. Your money is safe.
well, not if Noah Lyles jumps in board,
Yeah, of
or not
course.
if
No, of course.
Gout jumps up. Like so. To this point, there's been a standoff between World Athletics and World Aquatics and the enhanced games, basically saying if you compete there, even if you're clean, you're not allowed to come back. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's going to be upheld long term. If that
Yeah.
is upheld, of course, their money's safe. They can
Yeah.
offer whatever they want. People are probably not going to do it, although maybe someone else does come out. Maybe Fred Curley does, run really well. But if not, it's a really interesting thing. If people can go across and compete and just take money, similar to Grand Slam track, right? The athletes went across, they were like, I'll still race Diamond League, I'll just do some of this, take my money and be done. Like you can do it, right? Or previously the people doing PTO T100s taking a bunch of money and then going and doing the Ironman World Champs. So we shouldn't begrudge them being able to do that if they can. But yeah, it's a bit of a busted system, and it makes me come back to this: like, are we just in peak sport? Is this sustainable? Can we do this? Like, is it all up and to the right? Is it possible? Like, even just running the Olympics and what that does to a city cripples it. So, like,
Yeah.
we probably need to evolve how the Olympics are put on to be more like the original thought behind the enhanced games, which is decentralizing it, so that it was not in one spot. And given the way that the Olympics is consumed, you could certainly split it up. Now, obviously, the tourism aspect of that becomes different, but so does the cost for it becomes more of a country thing rather than a city thing. And this happens already, right? Tahiti had surfing when it was in Paris, and we
Yeah.
split, the sevens is across the whole country. So I
And it's
certainly
going to
think it's
happen in
feasible.
LA to a certain extent.
Oh, LA's even worse. Do you know where the rowing's happening?
Yeah. Where?
Oklahoma.
Not LA.
Not even within it. It's not even one state over.
Yeah.
Like, that's far.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a lot of that happen in the US. And, like, again, that may have to happen, and fair enough. Like,
Yeah.
what's the problem with it? If
To
you
help carry the cost. Yeah.
yeah, there are very few people who will randomly stumble up on the rowing. They may buy it as part of a bundle and fine, but yeah, it just makes it better. I think. I think it makes it more sustainable.
Well, thanks for that. I want to dig deeper. Maybe we come back to it again. I want to look into this 12 directors taking upward of 55 million, perhaps close to 65 million. I just did a quick Google search of it, and that does seem to be the case. I'm flabbergasted by that. Maybe we do a bigger dive into that at some point. Because it's hard to know as well without knowing costs, profit versus revenue. We spoke about in the tennis. It's hard to know
Exactly.
without.
So you can't divvy up. You can't have the Olympics going broke by paying too many athletes. I agree with
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But if we can split, let's say these 12 directors, let's be very charitable. If they're earning 65 million, if we can give them a million each, right? And then we take the rest of that money, we then have 63 million. Can we disperse that amongst the athletes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
Let's say
that
those
doable?
directors are passionate. If they're doing it for the glory, they'll still show up for work.
Well, wait, yeah. Anyway, we won't get into that.